you could see when he did the Last Supper, I was there right at the very edge.
Ernest Borgnine remained silent about the co-star who rendered his life a living hell for a period of 60 years. Suddenly, shocking information about what actually took place on set has come to light. Outbursts of violence, scenes that were sabotaged, and the incident in which someone threw coffee, which resulted in someone receiving burns of the second degree. On the other hand, the most shocking revelation was not only professional in nature, it was also intensely personal. Today marks the day that the truth about the most dangerous feud in Hollywood is finally brought to light. The journey that Ernest Borgnine took to arrive in Hollywood was anything but typical. Ernest Borgnine was born in Hamden, Connecticut in 1917. He began his life as the son of Italian immigrants living in the United States in the hopes of achieving the American dream. His life, however, took an unexpected turn before he had even had the opportunity to form memories of the place where he was born. His mother and father divorced when he was only 2 years old. The following 5 years were spent in Italy, where he was completely immersed in a new world during the time that his mother took him there. The only language he spoke was Italian, and he immersed himself in the culture of Carpi, which is close to Modena. He thought he had been born there. In 1923, everything underwent yet another transformation. After a reconciliation between his parents, the family went back to the United States of America. This relocation was not just about returning home, rather, it was about beginning a new life. Charles was the name that his father changed from Camillo to Charles. The family name, which had previously been Borgnino, was shortened to Borgnine in an effort to conform to the culture and sound more American. For young Ernest, this change in identity was just the beginning of a series of transformations that would come to define his future. While Borgnine was growing up in New Haven, Connecticut, he had no interest in having a career in acting. It wasn't like he was the kid who fantasized about Hollywood or sneaked into theaters to watch movies and movies. His attention was focused on sports, and he took pleasure in the intensity of the competition. His senior yearbook from high school did not contain any mention of theater or drama. At that point, there was no evidence to suggest that he would ever appear in front of a camera. However, fate had a different plan, and it began with the United States of America, the Navy. In 1935, shortly after graduating from high school, he enlisted in the military. For a period of 6 years, he was assigned to the destroyer USS Lamberton, where he carried out his duties. When he was ready to move on with his life, he received an honorable discharge in the year 1941. Nevertheless, Japan launched an attack on Pearl Harbor only 2 months later. It was impossible for him to do nothing while his country was engaged in a war. In January of 1942, he re-enlisted on the United States Navy and was assigned to serve on the USS Sylph, which was a patrol yacht that was tasked with protecting the Atlantic coast. This war altered him. It made him more sober. It provided him with a sense of discipline as well as a profound comprehension of camaraderie, both of which would later play a significant role in shaping the way he portrayed military characters on screen. In 1945, when he was finally discharged from the military, he had already attained the rank of Gunner's Mate First Class and had been awarded a number of high military honors. His career was on the verge of being in the Navy. He gave serious consideration to rejoining the military for an additional 10 years. It is possible that Hollywood would have never heard of his name if he had. After that, however, his mother made a statement that remained in his mind. She advised him to try his hand at acting because he possessed a domineering personality. Because of that one suggestion, everything was different. At first glance, acting had the appearance of being an odd choice. Not only did he lack experience and connections, but he also had no idea how to get started. However, he did not allow that to deter him. Following his enrollment at the Randall School of Drama in Hartford, he moved to Virginia and became a member of the Barter Theater organization there. This was not a particularly glamorous beginning. With a concept that was uncomplicated but out of the ordinary, the Barter Theater had been established during the Great Depression. Food could be exchanged for tickets by individuals. Therefore, actors were frequently compensated in vegetables rather than monetary compensation. It didn't matter to Borgnine. In order to perform night after night, he accepted any and all roles that he could handle. If he wasn't performing on stage, you could find him working behind the scenes, painting sets, repairing costumes, and even cleaning the restrooms. One evening, while he was performing, he was required to chase a live chicken across the stage. As people screamed and laughed, the bird flew away into the audience and took flight, flapping its wings wildly. It was complete and utter chaos. Nevertheless, it imparted upon him a valuable lesson. he was able to acquire the skills necessary to improvise, interact with the audience, and transform a miserable situation into something entertaining. He also had the opportunity to observe and learn from future stars such as Gregory Peck and Patricia Neal while working alongside them. And then came his moment of glory. With the help of Tennessee Williams, he was cast in the role of the Glass Menagerie. In his mind, he was a terrible person. No one in the audience agreed. After the performance, people started paying attention to what was going on. The performance was a success. In 1949, he was performing on Broadway. His debut performance was in Harvey, a play that has been running for a long time and stars the legendary actor James Stewart. To get there, however, had not been a simple task. The casting directors were at a loss concerning how to proceed with him. On the other hand, his face was too funny for drama and too mean for comedy. Nobody seemed to be able to figure out where he belonged in the hierarchy. On the other hand, Harvey disproved they. In his role as a male nurse, Borgnine discovered his place on stage by observing Stewart's every action and gaining knowledge from it. In fact, he kept a notebook in which he recorded his observations, studied the manner in which Stewart delivered lines, and learned the craft in real time during the performance. The play was performed 1,775 times, which provided him with the stability he required. The television then arrived at the door. It was in 1951 that he made his debut on television in the low-budget science fiction series Captain Video and his Video Rangers, in which he played the role of a villain. Even though it wasn't a particularly prestigious role, it was enough to get him noticed. Due to the fact that Columbia Pictures recognized his potential, they offered him a small role in the film The Whistle at Eaton Falls. Even though it wasn't much, it was a step in the right direction. From Here to Eternity, which was released in 1953, was the film in which he made his debut. Before moving to Hollywood, he had lived in the United States for a decade, the Navy. Having gone through that experience, he was a natural fit for roles in the military. Nothing, however, could have adequately prepared him for the role of Sergeant Fatso Judson. In contrast to the real Borgnine, who was known for his kindness, the character was cruel and sadistic. He was a far cry from actual Borgnine. The scene that was the most unsettling in the movie was when Judson used a nightstick to kill Angelo Maggio, who was played by Frank Sinatra. The behavior was gruesome, shocking, and difficult to watch. Initially, Sinatra had some reservations about Borgnine's capacity to play such a dangerous role. However, once production began, those reservations were quickly dispelled. When it came to the character, Borgnine completely immersed himself in it. So that he could get into the right frame of mind, he spent several days by himself. With the cameras rolling, he transformed into a completely different person. Because of the convincing nature of his performance, Sinatra did not engage in off-camera conversation with him for several weeks. Not even members of the crew avoided him. His co-stars were not the only ones who were affected by the intensity of the role. He continued to think about it long after the filming was over. After a while, he admitted that he had nightmares about the scene for a period of several months. There was an even more robust response from the audience, due to the fact that they were unable to differentiate between the actor and the character. Some individuals were so troubled by his performance that they sent him death threats. He suffered a great deal as a result of the role, but it made him a famous actor. It was 2 years later when he once again shocked Hollywood. This time, he was not portraying a villain in the role. During the course of Marty, he played the part of a typical butcher who was searching for love. One could say that it was the polar opposite of Fatso Judson. In and of itself, the movie was a gamble. A budget of only $343,000 was used to produce the film, which is an unheard of amount for a film that would go on to win the award for Best Picture. However, Marty was able to connect with audiences in a manner that no one anticipated. Borgnine was awarded the award for Best Actor at the 1955 Academy Awards. At the age of 38, he became one of the oldest actors to ever win an award for a leading role in his first film. The fact that he was able to beat out Hollywood legends such as James Dean and Spencer Tracy is even more surprising. His speech of acceptance was straightforward. He expressed his gratitude to his mother for her support in his pursuit of a career in acting. However, the reality was that he was almost never cast in the role in the first place. The original director, Delbert Mann, had his heart set on Rod Steiger, who had previously portrayed Marty in a television adaptation. In the beginning, Borgnine was not even a consideration. After a chance meeting at a party in Hollywood, that ended up being different. As a result of his ability to captivate the producers, they made the decision to give him a screen test. A later statement made by Mann stated that Ernest Borgnine did not act Marty because his performance was so natural. As Marty, he was. It wasn't just that role that altered his career as well. It was a game changer for Hollywood, demonstrating that films did not require massive budgets or famous actors in order to win over audiences. Never once did Borgnine allow himself to be confined to a single type of role. His performance as General Warden in the film The Dirty Dozen, which went on to become a cultural phenomenon, took place in 1967 when he was 50 years old. He was adamant about performing all of his own stunts, including a perilous leap from a moving train with his own 2 feet. It was his stamina that impressed his younger co-stars, including Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson, among others. In the film The Wild Bunch, which is considered to be one of the most violent westerns ever made, he once again shocked audiences 2 years later. Dutch Engstrom, the character he played, was a ruthless individual who was also oddly likable. It was one scene that stood out from the others. While he was killing dozens of men with his gun, he laughed like a crazy person. From that moment on, he was plagued by remorse. While this was going on, Ernest Borgnine's rise to fame on television was full of unexpected twists and turns. The television show McHale's Navy was the one that gave him his big break. The show aired for a total of 4 seasons and established him as a well-known figure. In the role of Lieutenant Commander Quentin McHale, Borgnine portrayed a laid-back officer who was in charge of a crew of misfits. When compared to the intense characters he had previously played, this role was completely different. The vast majority of people were unaware of the fact that his performance was influenced by his actual experiences. His time spent in the Navy during World War II was spent on the USS Sylph, where he served for a number of years. Because of this, he was able to perform with an innate sense of self-assurance, even when the show was at its most ridiculous. But McHale's Navy was not merely a source of amusement and effortless success. On the set of Borgnine, a serious accident occurred during the 2nd season of the animated series. The premature explosion of a pyrotechnic device caused him to suffer burns to his face and hands. During the 3 weeks that he was recovering, filming had to be put on hold. After his return, his commitment was even more resolute than it had been before. Also, in the same year, he was nominated for an Emmy for his performance in the role. In fact, the show had an effect on actual military operations that was completely unexpected. The United States Navy had consulted with the show's writers, according to a classified memo that was generated in 1965. Some officials were of the opinion that McHale's innovative approach to problem solving could be applicable in the real world. The end result was a series of naval training exercises called Operation McHale, which were inspired by the show by the Navy. Despite the fact that the specifics of those exercises are still classified, it is inconceivable that a sitcom could have influenced military strategy. The television career of Borgnine continued to evolve in ways that no one could have anticipated. During the year 1984, he was cast in the role of Dominic Santini in the action-packed television series Airwolf, which was about a helicopter from the future. Although he was 67 years old at the time, he did not allow himself to slow down. He even performed a significant number of his own stunts. 1985 was the year that he came dangerously close to losing his life. Just a few feet away from where he was standing, a helicopter went out of control and crashed while they were filming. He was able to escape with only minor injuries thanks to his lightning-fast reflexes, which saved him. After that, he was cast in the role of Mermaid Man in SpongeBob SquarePants, which brought him to the attention of an entirely new generation. It was his grandson, who was a huge fan of the show, who was the one who started everything. The boy insisted that he ought to be on it over and over again. On a particular evening in the year 1998, Borgnine brought this up at a charity event. There was a company executive from Nickelodeon present, and they requested that he read a few lines right then and there. He delivered the performance that earned him the job, despite the fact that he had nothing more than a napkin to use as a script. Over the course of 13 years, Mermaid Man appeared in 17 episodes, becoming a fan favorite. Additionally, the creators of the show included a few references to Borgnine's actual service in the Navy within the character's actual dialogue. In 2012, just 2 weeks before he passed away, he participated in his last recording session. Even though though he was 95 years old, he continued to work, making him one of the oldest voice actors who was still active at the time. While Borgnine went on to become a television legend, there was a time when he wanted nothing to do with the medium. He was offered the lead role in The Real McCoys in 1956, shortly after he had won the Academy Award for his performance in Marty. He declined the offer, stating to the reporters that television is a passing trend that will never exist. During that time period, the majority of movie stars considered television to be a lower level. This mentality shifted in the year 1961. He met a young boy who was battling a terminal illness while he was attending a charity event. He was told by the child that watching his movies while he was in the hospital brought him a lot of happiness. Borgnine was knocked down by that moment. Suddenly, he understood that television was about more than just entertainment. It was able to connect with people in a way that movies were unable to. The Real McCoys was already a hit by the time he made the decision that he wanted to work in television, and Walter Brennan was playing the lead role. Borgnine learned a valuable lesson from that rejection. Just a few short months later, McHale's Navy presented itself, and he made the most of the opportunity. At a later point in time, he acknowledged that he had been incorrect about television. He stated in an interview that I was a fool to believe that television was beneath me. On the contrary, the size of the screen is irrelevant. The size of the audience's heart is the most important factor. It is impossible to forget the performances that Ernest Borgnine gave throughout his entire life. But the drama in his romantic life was just as intense. At the age of 95, he had 5 different marriages. While some marriages ended in heartbreak, others in scandal, and one in enduring devotion, others ended in scandal. Before he became famous, he was already married to his first wife, Rhoda Kemmons. In 1949, they tied the knot, and in 1952, they welcomed a daughter named Nancy. Over the course of almost 10 years, they constructed a coexistence. But Hollywood brought about a complete reset. The couple's marriage began to fall apart as Borgnine's career began to take off. It was over by the year 1958. A Mexican actress named Katie Jurado, who is known for her fiery presence both on screen and off, was the person with whom he began the next chapter of his love life. The year 1959 marked the year of their wedding, but their relationship was anything but peaceful. In addition to making headlines, their fights frequently resulted in public arguments due to their intense passion. They reached their limit in 1963. One more marriage that ended, and one more thing that was learned. Then came the one that was the shortest and most notorious of all of them. Borgnine tied the knot with Ethel Merman, a Broadway legend, in the year 1964. The entirety of their relationship lasted for a little more than a month. When I first heard about it, it seemed like a Hollywood fairy tale. After the wedding, which took place in June, they went on a honeymoon trip to Japan. On the other hand, the trip ended up being a fiasco rather than a romantic one. Following Borgnine wherever they went, fans surrounded them. Merman, who was accustomed to being in the spotlight, experienced feelings of being ignored. Despite the passage of time, the tension continued to increase. In Tokyo, things went off the rails. After some time had passed, witnesses recalled hearing a heated argument that reverberated throughout the hallways of their hotel. When the trip was over, Merman had reached the point where she could no longer take it. As a result of her rage, she threw a ring that was made of diamonds and pearls into a koi pond. She submitted her petition for divorce a little over a month after she had said, "I do." Never again did Merman bring up the subject of the marriage. Her silence, on the other hand, was the one that spoke for her. 1978 was the year that she published her autobiography. My Marriage to Ernest Borgnine was the book's title for one of the chapters. As they turned the page, readers anticipated reading a story. There was nothing but a blank page that they discovered instead. Without uttering a single word, it was a statement that managed to convey everything. Subsequently, Borgnine admitted how much pain it caused. According to what he said in an interview, that blank page conveyed more information to me than anything she could have written. I will never forget the slap in the face that I received this. Following the calamity, Borgnine tied the knot with Donna Rancourt in the year 1965. The couple was blessed with 3 children, Diana, Christopher, and Sharon. Despite the fact that this marriage lasted longer than the others, it failed to last until 1972 and ended in divorce. Then, at long last, he discovered the one. When Borgnine was in Las Vegas for a party in 1972, he was introduced to Tove Tresnes, a Norwegian businesswoman. Initially, she was hesitant because she was aware of his reputation. However, Borgnine's charisma was able to win her over. They tied the knot in 1973, and it was the first time he experienced true stability in his life. He considered Tove to be his partner in every way. She was more than just his wife. Following the establishment of her prosperous beauty business, Borgnine emerged as her most ardent supporter. As a result of his appearance in her advertisements, he even joked that he was the oldest living Avon lady in the entire world. Their love lasted for almost 40 years, which is longer than all of his previous marriages combined by a significant margin. It was frequently stated by Borgnine that Tove was the reason he continued to live during the final years of his life. It was just a few weeks before he passed away when he gave his final interview, in which he stated, "I am 95 years old and I am still going strong. I believe that it is due to the love that I have for Tova's character." He passed away on July 8, 2012, with her by his side holding his hand. He had been ill for some time. It had taken him many years of looking, but he had at last discovered the love that would last. While this was going on, Ernest Borgnine and Shelley Winters were both well-known actors who possessed powerful personalities, which made their time spent working together on the Poseidon adventure anything but simple. After their ship sank, the narrative of the disaster movie from 1972 focused on a group of passengers who were attempting to stay alive. The role of a tough detective was played by Borgnine, and Winters played the role of his determined wife. At the same time that their performances were intense, the working relationship between them was fraught with tension behind the scenes. An approach that was known for being demanding was Winters's. She was a firm believer in having a complete understanding of her characters and frequently advocated for modifications to the script. On a particular day, she showed up at the set carrying a 20-page document that detailed the history of her character. She was adamant about rewriting lines so that they would conform to her vision. As a result of the screenwriter's resistance, Borgnine found himself in a difficult position overall. After some time had passed, he admitted that working with Winters was exhausting due to the fact that she felt the need to control every detail. When we were in a challenging underwater scene, we faced the most difficult challenge. The production team was concerned about Winters' safety, but she insisted on performing her own stunts regardless of the situation. At the age of 51, she wanted to demonstrate that she could still swim like a champion. What was supposed to be a short shoot turned into a long and intense day that lasted for 14 hours. In order for the director to be satisfied with the scene, it had to be filmed 65 times. Despite the fact that the long hours were frustrating for everyone, including Borgnine, he maintained his professionalism. After some time had passed, he referred to it as one of the most challenging days of his professional life. Despite the difficulties, Winters' performance was one that will not soon be forgotten. A nomination for an Academy Award was presented to her as a result of her unwavering commitment. In spite of his frustration, Borgnine eventually admitted that Winters' instincts were on the right track most of the time. A number of years after the movie was released, he referred to her as a violent force. It is difficult and unpredictable, but there is no denying their talent. Having the opportunity to collaborate with her was, in his opinion, both a challenge and a privilege. Ultimately, the conflicts that occurred between them on set served to ratchet up the intensity of their performances. Additionally, Ernest Borgnine had always had a great deal of respect for Spencer Tracy, but the experience of working with him on Bad Day at Black Rock in 1955 was an entirely different thing. The issue was not merely one of respect, rather, it was one of intimidation. The first day of filming took place on July 12, 1954 in Lone Pine, California. Despite the fact that the temperature was well above 100 degrees, Borgnine was hardly bothered by it. He was too preoccupied with his concerns about appearing on screen alongside one of the most talented actors in Hollywood. By the time he was 54 years old, Tracy had already won 2 Academy Awards and was well known for his straightforward approach to acting. At 37, Ernest Borgnine was proving his talent, but working with Spencer Tracy was a challenge. Tracy's improvisation and confidence left Borgnine struggling, especially during long, uninterrupted takes. During one tense scene, Tracy delivered an unexpected line, catching Borgnine off guard. Their on-screen tension was real, culminating in the famous diner fight scene in Bad Day at Black Rock. The physical contrast between them heightened the drama, and after 14 takes, including a real punch, Borgnine gained new respect for Tracy. That experience led Tracy to recommend Borgnine for Marty, 1955, which won him an Oscar. The following year, Borgnine joined Johnny Guitar, stepping into one of Hollywood's most infamous feuds, Joan Crawford versus Mercedes McCambridge. Crawford, enraged over McCambridge's past with her ex, turned the set into a battleground. Borgnine witnessed Crawford throwing McCambridge's costumes onto the highway and scalding a production assistant with hot coffee. The cast worked separately to avoid direct confrontations, but on September 3rd, tensions exploded into a physical fight. Borgnine and Sterling Hayden had to intervene. Despite her volatility, Crawford had a softer side, gifting the crew personalized Pepsi bottles on the final day. Yet, she still delivered one last warning to McCambridge, vowing to ruin her career. Reflecting on it years later, Borgnine described working with Crawford as walking on eggshells while juggling dynamite. Brilliant, but terrifying.